I was doing some research looking at how people cope with traumatic experience. If you ask people to write for 15 minutes a day for, say, 3 or 4 days, what happens is if you track their physical health, they actually get better. There's changes in their immune function. They get along with people better. It often helps them to put things together in their own minds. And I became just fascinated with this. What is it about writing that makes a difference? So my students and I started to look at the words people were using and seeing if we could identify healthy writing. And as we did, we started looking at essay after essay, and we soon discovered that the ways people wrote could tell us if they were going to get better or not after writing. And much to my surprise, the words they were writing that were important were not these content words. Instead, they were these invisible function words, words like pronouns and prepositions and articles. And the way that people constructed a story by using these little invisible words turned out to predict health improvements. This discovery was eye-opening for me. And we ended up writing a series of computer programs to now start looking at words across the spectrum. So we could look at poems or books or essays or emails or Twitter feeds, almost anything, and get a sense of the psychology of the author. As we went back and looked at all of the writings of people writing about traumatic experience, we started to discover there were certain types of words that made a big difference. For example, people who increased in their use of what we call insight words or causal words. These are words like because, cause, effect, reason, rationale, or words like understand, realize. That over time, as people increased in their use of these words, if they did that, their health was much more likely to improve. And then we discovered some other things. As we started looking at pronouns, these pronouns they were amazing. What we discovered was that people who bounced back and forth between using words like I, me, and mine, and then maybe the next writing session they talked about he, she, they, and the next one they go back to I, me, my. What we discovered is those people who flipped back and forth in the way they use pronouns, they were the healthiest. It was almost a marker that they had the ability to change perspective. So today they could talk about how they felt, and the next day they could talk about how somebody else did.